Okay, so back to thinking about like prioritization when you're an HR team of one, but when you are a team of one, you have to balance all the various HR functions. Like you said, you were hiring 10 people a month, but that also means like onboarding to growth and development of those people to all these things. So how do you do that when you're the only person on the team? Like how do you work across every HR function, which our job itself is very wide, is like wider than any other function, I think, because we touch so much.
It's really hard. You have to balance between the things that are business critical, payroll, terminations, leaves of absence, those things that just like drop on your desk, we need to handle now. And then what are like the business essential things? Well, I need to hire people, so I need to have documents in place. I need to be able to onboard them. What are we doing for performance management? And then there are things that are so important, but they just don't fit into either of those buckets. There's like not enough time in the day. It's the employee engagement, it's the compensation planning, it's maybe actually writing the handbook, especially at an early stage startup. Those are the things that become kind of like left in the undertow, and they don't get the attention they need. It's all the things that it's like, well, we'll figure it out. It's like, no, we need to know this now. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if in a past life or even like in a parallel life, I was a firefighter, because I don't know how I did it. And I really, if I look back at that time, I was working 12 hours a day. I was answering phones on Saturday morning, talking to the CEO about like, okay, like we need to talk about this thing that we didn't talk about all this week. And I loved my job at Steno. I absolutely loved it, but it is hard. It is not easy. And so anyone who was hoping for me to say that I have the secret sauce on how to balance that, I don't, but you got to be in for the ride for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like there's no right answer to the question I just asked, like, because I think it just depends. Like it is, I also think if I went back and did things differently, like I don't know how I did things 5 years ago, like when I had no resources, it just seems like wild. But I think the way you positioned it is like there are things that have to be done, and there are other things that like you want to do, but you don't actually have the time to do. And I think just being okay saying like, hey, I can't do those things. I think like I'm always afraid to admit failure. I feel much safer in the environment I work in now, where I can say like, hey, I messed that up, or I have a good enough relationship with my founders, or I can be honest about those things. But in the past, I was so afraid to say no, or that I don't have bandwidth, so I would do everything. I think if anyone's listening to this, like I just want to remind you, like you can't do everything. There's some things you're just never going to get to, especially if you're a team of one.
Yeah, I mean, and that I think that's true for any job. That is not unique to HR.
Okay.
I have a whole list of things that I need to do for my current job that are so nice to have things that I'm not doing. So if my boss is listening, I got
to listening. She's great. She got all the things that she was dying. No, I mean, it's true.
It's challenging. Yeah.
I think like every job is challenging. I do think like, I don't know, maybe I should go work in a different department someday, because I think I have like such a bias for HR. Where I'm like, HR is the hardest. Don't tell me it's not. Like it is the hardest job. But I just think it impacts so much that I feel like there's an added pressure always on us to do everything and to get everything done.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like other departments are like, oh, I didn't get to that. And I'm just like, oh, what?
Well,
I have
to tell you though, it's so interesting because I am on a sales team now. And as an HR person, you always think like, oh God, sales, like, I don't know. But, to answer your question, or like to like reiterate the point you were just making about, what's it like being on another team? I'm having that experience now where there are still challenges of, am I creating something that someone else is already working on? Or how are we going to get all these things done? And there's not enough time in the day. And all of these things that are important and nice to have, and pain points and deal breakers and things like that, that we are looking at just on the list of things that we have to get done for a given day or a given week is complicated. And I think the number one skill that I probably got out of my HR experience that is directly transferable is that time management, being able to really prioritize like, what are these things that are business critical? What are the things that are business essential? And what are the things that we'll figure out later? Like, I think that skill is true in any role.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, yeah, I always think we have it hardest in HR, but that's probably just like I told you, my narrow view of the world, and maybe I need to expand my view more because I've been on other teams, but nothing feels as like important as HR. But maybe that's just because I care so much, and that's where I
Yeah.
am. But it's so interesting because when I'm encountering problems in work, I'm always asking myself like two questions, like what is the reach of this problem? Like how
Mhm.
far spread across the organization is it? How many people is it going to impact across the organization? So, okay, we've touched on this a little bit. Like we've talked a little bit about like how you prioritize everything and the things you use to like get work done.